Welcome everyone to your 2025 Southeast AAA Regional Preview. I'm here, Lloyd Vance, and I'm with Dave Maiers. How are you doing this evening?
Doing well, Lloyd, once again. It's always nice to be with you, talking some wrestling, getting ready for this Friday and Saturday Southeast Regional. So looking forward to tonight. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Dave, and it's exciting times because we got a lot of great feedback from our uh, recent district sectional preview that we had did, and a lot of people came up to me and said how much they liked it and how much they enjoyed it, and we even got a sponsor.
Oh,
OWA, the Oxford Wrestling Alliance, is sponsoring us. We're very happy to have them on board, and lots to talk about around the Southeast region. A lot of times we had hosted this regional at Oxford the last couple of years, and this year it's going to be at Souderton, as you said, starting Friday night, February 28th, and going into Saturday the 1st. Now, Dave, I think you wanted to go over in terms of the matches, who's going to go when. In terms of Friday, who's going to wrestle first, and just give the folks out there a little bit on that.
yeah. So when I looked at the schedule, what I got from it is that Friday night, I believe starting at 5 o'clock, they'll start with the pigtail matches that they have, which would be two matches in each weight class, and then that'll lead right into the first round. So they'll wrestle the entire first round, and then they're also going to wrestle the quarterfinals on Friday night. Once the quarterfinals are over, wrestling will stop Friday night. They'll come back Saturday morning starting at 9:30. And they'll begin with the first round of consolations, followed by the second round of consolations. Following that at 12:30 would be the semifinals, Consi quarters and Consi semis. Um, and then the placement matches will begin at 5:15 on Saturday evening. So long day, but that is the schedule for this coming weekend. So it has changed somewhat. Years past, there used to be a consolation on the first night, but this year that is not taking place.
And hopefully lights stay on. The last time we had a situation there, but I'm sure everybody's raring to go, and exciting times around the southeast portion of District One, and a lot of teams to look at, wrestlers look at, a lot of individuals having some great seasons. And you and I have been looking at all the brackets. I know last time we focused a lot on that South sectional, but there was also the Central sectional and also the North, and you had some really quality teams and individual kids stepping forward. So the key thing is five kids will get their lucky ticket punch to go to Hershey for the PIAA, AAA state championships, and we're going to go bracket by bracket. And Dave, this time I won a coin flip. So as a former heavyweight, I'm going to start with the big guys. I'm excited to talk about a lot of these kids in this region, and in particularly starting at 285. And at 285, there is a prohibitive favorite. It's Dean Bechtold coming out of Owen J. Roberts, a junior. He's only 9-0 this season. He did battle through some injuries early in the season, but he's looking to be in prime form. I was looking at his performance in the South sectional, excuse me, in the Central sectional, and he was just dominant. So he finished second last year as a sophomore. He's already pledged to go to Lehigh. So this young man is known statewide. And let's talk a little bit about this bracket, and should everybody focus on Bechtold, or who else really jumped out to you in terms of the 285 bracket?
Yeah, when I looked at this bracket, again, like you said, the first name that's out, I think Bechtold pinned his way through the sectional tournament. And I honestly, my own personal belief is that, he's on his way to a state title. He's that good. Unfortunately, he was derailed by some injury earlier, so only has 9 matches. But you know what? Maybe he's a little bit fresher, coming back but he, like you say, he's the prohibitive favorite. After that, I honestly believe this heavyweight division is really kind of wide open. There's several guys out of the South that I thought performed very well last week. Um, but I think honestly, from my own perspective, the guy that's the 2 seed, has really started wrestling well out of Springford. Connor Hudak, I know he has some matches against some guys this year. I lost earlier in the year to Jace McKinney, came back and beat Jace McKinney. I think Connor Hudak for me looks to be the guy coming out of the bottom half of this bracket. After that, I think it's a matter of, I like Fazan Ahmad out of Westchester Henderson. It won the South section last week. Tight match in the finals against Sensi DeKenna from Ridley. I believe it was a 5-3 match. Another name I'm looking at is Jeff Gessner out of Council Rock South, senior, 32-14, has wrestled a really tough schedule. He's going to be there in the end. Justin Williams from Westchester East has progressively gotten better the entire year. He's a kid that'll go out there and look to pin you and put you on your back and get the pin as soon as possible. So for me, Bechtold and Hudak to me seem to be the final here. With any of the following: Ahmad, Gessner, McKinney, Williams. Another name I want to throw out there, somebody looking out to look out for, is Cameron Montgomery out of Haverford High. Another senior. A lot of upperclassmen in this bracket, but I can see after the first two, I think there's anywhere from 4 to 5 guys that could really get those last 3 spots. So, it's a matter of where they are in the quarterfinal, who they're going to face, and down there in the loser bracket, like Ahmad and Montgomery face each other in the quarters. Who has a road? What's the road look like when they drop down into that losers bracket? So, it's going to be a lot of good wrestling here. And I truly believe Bechtold, Hudak, Ahmad, Gessner, McKinney, Williams, any one of those 6, I think out of those 6, I think 5 of them, will make their way to Hershey. Again, the kid from Ridley, can't count him out either. So really good bracket we're looking at 285.
Right. And a lot of people kind of forget about the heavyweights because they're usually the last match of the night. And you're correct. There's a lot of quality kids in this bracket. And I'll throw a couple more out there. Tyler Prince from Wissahickon, he's the senior, 33-5. He wrestled a lot of 215 this season, came up for the postseason. I think he may be in the mix. Senke Dekene, as you said, we saw him wrestle pretty tough against Ahmad last week. And he's a young man that's coming along at the right time. And you have Owen Schwartz from the Chamonix. He's going to be in a pigtail match. He finished 5th. But he's had a pretty good season as well. And Nick Farabee from Strathaven, he kind of scratched at the end of there, coming in as a 6th. We'll see how he's going to do. But as you said, I definitely think in terms of the way the bracket's laid out, that it'll be Hudak and Bechtold in that final. And then I'm looking at Gessner, Williams, McKinney, who did not wrestle his best last week. I talked to him. He said, he's looking forward to this week, and Ahmad as well. So it's going to be interesting because it's not going to be straight chalk pave. And I think that maybe we'll have a few surprises in this bracket. I'm looking forward to the wrestleback, but definitely Dean Bechtold is head and shoulders above the rest of this group.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Moving on to 215 now. It's crazy because you say Bechtold and everybody's like, oh, Dylan Bechtold at Bucknell and he was state champ. But it's another Bechtold come along in this bracket I wanted to kind of talk to you about is Decker Bechtold. He won the Central as a freshman, 14-2. And it was weird kind of the way that they set up this bracket because you have potential quarterfinal match of Brady Kelly, who we saw, who was the South sectional champion from Unionville, 37-1, potentially against Decker Bechtold in that quarterfinals. And then I want to get your thoughts on the rest of this bracket, in particularly, I wanted to talk about Walker Murray coming out of Pennsbury as another senior, 26-1. Rami Ayu, we saw him last week kind of make a run, unheralded. His record's 21-13 out of Coatesville, a junior, but he was wrestling very well. He's in the bottom half of this bracket. And just talking about what you see in terms of matchups and what you're thinking in terms of who may pop out of this group.
Yeah. So when I first looked at this bracket, I went directly to where you did and saw Decker Bechtold as a 9 seed finishing first. And I think that's due to having 16 matches. So tried to look into, some of the scoring and how the seeding was done. I didn't have enough time to really look at that, but based off of my understanding, that's, the reasoning behind him being seated as a 9. When I looked at this, that second section of this bracket, it's there for the taking. Guys like Greg Ferrari from Interborough, Luke Palladino from Ridley, you Caleb Duman and Shinobu, and I apologize for the name, but Morfaya from Plymouth Whitemarsh. You have 4 guys there. One of those guys is going to the semifinals. So, you have a 4, a 4, a 5, and a 3 in that second half of that top half of the bracket. One of those guys is going to find themselves in the semifinals. I think, like you said, the quarterfinal between Kelly and Bechtold, that's going to be one of the best matches that we see in this particular bracket. Unfortunately, it has to happen, at the quarterfinals. So we're going to see what happens up there. But when you go down bottom, you have Michael McCormick out of Souderton. You see with the home crowd, some home cooking there up in Souderton. See how Michael McCormick performs there. You have a guy like Grady Wortneyby who beat the 3 seed from the South last week. He's now the 5. He's down there. He's facing McCormick in the first round. So, and you can't forget about Dylan Paycheck out of Methacton. I think he's going to surprise some people. But for me, when I looked at this, for some reason, and I don't know why, I've seen him wrestle for a few years now. I think Walker Mary's on a mission. I look at him and big, strong kid and has really wrestling well, coming in at 26-1. And, when the day ends, that's who I see in the 215 bracket. But I see, him facing Bechtold or Kelly. Whoever wins that match, I think goes to the finals. Me personally, I think Bechtold. I just think he's wrestling really, really well. Kelly comes back. Ayub, you mentioned it. He was fun to watch last week. Yeah, he'll get inside, he'll throw. He's a big, strong kid that's not afraid to get around on the mat a little bit, and you're going to see him there. Like I said, McCormick, Paycheck, Ferrari. It's a number of guys. I see it. Mary Bechtold, Kelly, Ayub, and the guy. I actually have Ferrari coming out, but maybe McCormick. That's that if they see each other in the 5-6, that's going to go either way. So, really good bracket, little interesting in terms of seeding, but going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, as you said, yeah, I did look at the formula and it was like, okay, how they
Yeah.
came up with the points, and it was where they finished in the sectional, but also they factored in their record as well. So that definitely factored in the way that they were seated and the way the brackets were set up. And I used to always tell the kids, it's wrestling. It'll shake itself out, and no matter where their seat is, they got to go out there and do their thing out there and on the mat. And Bechtold, he's a freshman. And I'm really looking forward to that match with Brady Kelly. I spent a lot of time with him last week at South Sectional. Athletic kid. He also plays across, good footwork. That's going to be a good match because I haven't seen Decker Beckhold wrestle since his junior high days. So it'll be interesting. But if he's anything like his brother, he's probably a big, strong kid, athletic. They're stellar trained kids, and we'll see how this turns out. And the final I have is Bechtold against Murray, with Bechtold coming through as a champion. And then, as you said, Kelly, Paycheck. I do like AU's possibilities here. Luke Palladino, he wrestled back well last week out of Ridley. I have him in the mix. And then Jaden George, we'll see what he has. He's out of Bensalem, another young man. His record's 17-14, but he's a senior. We'll see if he's able to wrestle back hard and see how he kind of turns out in terms of this bracket. But I think 215, as we said, a lot of quality matchups. We're going to have that one matchup probably early, and we're just going to have to see how this shakes out.
Yeah. Yeah, and in terms of we talk about the seeding. It's not an easy process. We don't really talk about it much in terms of how it's done. The guys I know at PA Wrestling, we mentioned them last week. Mike Leister does it, and there's a whole formula, and there's a lot of questions about how it works. Those guys do a great job putting this together. So, but it's interesting to see how they play out when it comes to the points. And like you said, it's all going to happen on the mat. Whether it's in the quarterfinals, whether it's semifinals or finals, still have to go out there and wrestle the match and put your best foot forward, and that's what's going to happen on Friday, Saturday.
And it seems like in every bracket, you could say, okay, these 5, 6 kids, you throw them in a bag and you kind of see which ones fall out. But
Sure.
um, it's going to be interesting. 189. He's not a prohibitive favorite, but he's had a great season. Brandon Carr, we saw him last week out of Sun Valley, very physical wrestler, 43-2 scenery. He just had 150th win as a two-time state qualifier. Um, he's on the top of this bracket right now at the number one seed. And then there's a lot of other guys factoring in here. Kind of when you get your take on, in particular, you have Carter Euchre coming out of Perkins Valley. He's a senior, 40-8. They've had a lot of great wrestlers in their family as well. And then he's really stepped forward, and I can't believe he's finally a senior. I've seen him wrestle since his youth days. You also have Michael Spielman still in there from Strathaven. He's a South 4. He's 36-4 junior, and let's not forget he finished 8th last year in the state. He's in the mix. You have also Franco Latore, who we were impressed with last week. He finished second in the South to Carr, and he's also in his bracket. So a lot of good names in here. And one I'm going to get your take on, being a Delco guy, Paxton Hunt out of Garnet Valley. He's had a pretty good season, had a very good match with Carr last week in Oxford, and just talk about him and where he sits in the bracket and what you think how this may shake out.
Yeah, so I see this shaking out pretty much the way it's on paper now. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the semis. Paxton Hunt, he's 27-8. 3 of those losses were to Brandon Carr. I think last week was 4-0. He battles, he's wrestled Carr well all season long. So, Paxton, he's not going to back down from anybody. He's wrestled Spielman 2 or 3 times. They may see each other again, if depending on Spielman. I think Spielman may have been wrestling a little injured last week. Like you said, he finished 8th last year. He came out of the South. He came out in 4th. So, he lost to Paxton, but I believe he beat Paxton earlier in the year. So another bracket where guys are, beating each other up throughout the year. The one, and I meant it in our last preview, I said there may be 3 or 4 guys from the South that come out of this bracket and make their way to states. And I still see that. You know, but you have to talk about Carter Euchre, and looking some stuff up. Carter wrestled Carr earlier in the year. It was a 4-2 match. So Carter can wrestle. So like you said, we've seen him. He's got some older brothers that are there, and it's a wrestling family. So I also believe he is a 2-time state qualifier. So he has the experience as well. He's going to get challenged, I think, in the quarterfinals. Tamir Griffin out of Lower Marion he finished second last week to Carter, so in the Central. So they're going to see each other in the quarterfinals. Good match. The other name that I have is the guy that finished third out of Central is Josh Larimore, somebody I think we need to keep an eye on as well as we go through this bracket. He's another guy that, depending on how the bracket plays out, Larimore, he could upset a few people and he can find himself there. When all's said and done, I have 4 guys from the South and Euchre, Carr, Hunt, Latour, Spielman, and Euchre, with Larimore down in the 5th, 6th place with Spielman. So, Larimore's right there. Like I said, there's a couple guys. Another name I want to put out there, and younger, and again, a lot of seniors in this particular bracket. Another name that I want to put out there is the guy to finish first out of the North is David Clayton, Quakertown. Quakertown's a great program. A lot of good wrestlers out of Quakertown, and only a sophomore, but comes in with a 33-7 record, finishing first in the North. So another guy that can make some noise and somebody to keep an eye on out of this bracket.
Yeah, David's a good wrestler, and he actually wrestled my son years ago in the youth ranks, so I always remember him and his family. And he's a good long wrestler, and he's growing. As you said, only a sophomore, and he was able to win his section last week, so he's in the mix in this bracket. I wanted to point out Euchre earlier beat Latour 8-5, so they wrestled as well. And then you talked about Carr and Euchre in that close 4-2 match. So I have Carr winning it, Euchre in your final, and then I have Hunt, Latour, and then possibly Clayton Spielman, in the mix.
Yeah.
So this is a fun bracket, Dave, and like I said earlier, it's just not going to be chalk. So it's a big moment, big stage, a lot of people in the gym, and
Mhm.
you're going to see some upsets. But definitely, that's kind of how I see it at the point for 189. I'm Lloyd Vance. I'm here with Dave Maiers. We're talking 2025 Southeast AAA regional brackets here, and it's going to be at Souderton, February 28th, March 1st. So glad you could join us. We continue at 172. Now, this one's interesting because you have Gavin Cole. He finished 8th in 2024. He's a Navy commit out of Council Rock South. And I saw a great match between him and Blake Hostetter at the district goals. And want to get your take on Gavin Cole. Is it going to be talk him and Hostetter in the finals? Wanted to see if there's anybody else that you think may jump out in the mix here. I think Ryan Solomon, who finished second in the North from Abington, has an opportunity. I saw him wrestle live earlier this season. Matty Shoemaker, a Methacton, he's another senior, 36-2. I think he'll be in the mix. Jack Weldon from Coatesville, 32-6. He finished third last week in the South. These are a lot of the names in the mix. So wanted to get your take on Cole, and it's going to be Cole and Hostetter again.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's going to be round 3, and it's gonna be a battle. So thing about Gavin Cole is he comes in with experience. He comes in with 45 wins. He's a senior, has wrestled in some of the top tournaments that we have in the area. The last time these two wrestled, Cole got out to a little bit of a lead, and Blake was able to come back. Blake's a funky wrestler, so it's kind of and maybe a different style for Gavin. Although Gavin can pretty much wrestle with anyone. I've seen Gavin a few times. Gavin's actually wrestled, both of my boys at some point, in the previous years. So have some experience watching Gavin Cole. He's just hard nosed, but Blake coming back from injury, like we said before, kind of a man on a mission. So I definitely see the two of these guys finding their way to round 3. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that match, and then that match could go either way. It really can. I would not be surprised if Gavin won, but I would not be surprised if Blake won the third time. It's hard to beat a guy 3 times. They say that in all sports, right? It's hard to beat a team 3 times, right, Lloyd? So, but that's not to take anything with Blake. Has every opportunity to win that match. Also, you brought up Matty Shoemaker. I've seen him wrestle many times. Comes in with 2 losses, right? Another senior. Yet I see it as him seeing Blake in the semis, which is a really good match, a tough match. Matty's a tough kid, strong kid, so that's a really good semifinal match. Up top, like you said, you have Ryan Solomon, yeah, and you have the 3 seed also, who I think might be surprised a little bit, is Arthur Gordon Cheltenham. He comes in with a 33-4 record. So, those 2 guys. Again, I haven't seen too much. I did see Solomon a little bit. I haven't seen too much of Arthur Gordon, but anybody's coming in with a 33-4 record is a quality wrestler and somebody to keep an eye on. The other one that we need to mention is JD Heiser, Boyertown, his junior, 42-11. Boyertown, and I'm sure at the end we could talk a little bit, but that's a team that, is just strong throughout. And JD Heiser finished second last week behind Matty Shoemaker at the Central Region. So, for me, I see JD Heiser actually going to the semis in that
That's
top
what I
half.
got him too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I
and
have him
Hayden
against
Baldwin,
Cole there.
we saw him last week against Blake. Tough kid. I have him. That's that Baldwin Heiser matchup in the quarterfinals. That would be Friday night. It will be a good match. And again, knowing these Jack Weldon, have known him for a number of years. He actually wrestled Blake pretty hard on last Saturday. So I see Jack Weldon as being somebody to keep an eye on in this bracket as well.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fun one to watch. I think that highly anticipated uh, third match between Cole and Hostetter, I think, is coming. I got to see both matches. Ironically, the first one was at the Scott Gold Classic very early in the season. Blake won that 1-5-4, and then at District Duels at Upper Dublin a couple weeks ago, Blake wins 6-5. It was very heated, loud gym, and I know both guys really wanted that win, and Blake ended up getting it. I think he got a takedown right at the end to get the victory. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one turns out. A lot of people looking forward to the 172 brackets. Moving on to 160. Dave, this is another one. Everybody was texting me and emailing like, oh, we already know who's going to win this one, but you never know. You got to go out there, and kids are going to wrestle and see how it turns out. And because Colin Guy from Quakertown is senior, he's 36-0. He finished first in 2023 in the state of Pennsylvania, second in 2024. He's committed to Virginia Tech. Everybody in this region knows all about him, and probably a good chance for OW. But I know all my folks back at Oxford are like, hold on, we got another super sop that they want to talk about. John Smith has had a great season, 38-3 out of Oxford. He wrestled very well last week in terms of just dominating AJ Corp at the end of that match, and coming out with a pretty substantial victory, and just showing he's pretty locked in the postseason. Smith has a potential semifinal match, another matchup of Oxford, Council Rock South, potentially with Brillhart. Last time they wrestled another one, the gym was excited in Upper Dublin at District Duels. Everybody was like turning their heads, wanting to watch this match, and John gutted it out. It came a little chippy, but he showed his physicality and was able to win that match. So just talk a little bit about this bracket and how you see it shaking out.
Yeah, like you said, Colin Guy is 36-0 for a reason. He's long, he's strong. It kind of goes about his business, goes out the mat, does what he needs to do, comes off the mat. There's not a lot of flair there. Just, he knows what he's doing, and he gets it done. I think I saw earlier, and then I had seen it somewhere. He hasn't been beaten by a 3A guy. I think 3A wrestler since his freshman year, I think is what I read. I think Nate Heckenberger put that out there, I believe. So, that's pretty impressive. So, like you said, I actually, I see him getting to the finals, and most likely winning it. Like you said, seeing John Smith, I do have John going there. I've been so impressed with John. Has had such a great year. He's been a lot of fun to watch throughout the entire season. But like you said, that semifinal matchup, Brillhart's not just going to roll over for him this time. They've had a few battles, and Ben Brillhart is, again, Council Rock South, another team that just puts out quality wrestlers year after year, and Ben's another one of those wrestlers. So that's a really good semifinal match that I'm looking forward to. Another match that really kind of opens my eyes that I think might happen is the quarterfinal match up top, which would be AJ Corp and Beknazar Baishkabakov out of
I
Neshaminy.
was good
Yeah,
job, Dave. Good job.
yeah, I think I got it right. I think I got it right. But I'll tell you what, if you want to see two kids that are super strong, that's a match to see. And I really think that match goes a long way in, our placements down the bottom. You know, Obviously somebody has to win that match. I believe Beknazar was a state qualifier last year. Corp was hurt, similar to John Smith, both on a mission to get there this year. So, this is definitely a bracket that I see, kind of almost the way it plays out. Your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 place guys. Another one I think I have to throw out there is the hometown favorite there, Johnny Beckett. He's a senior out of Souderton who's 30-7. I see him having a really good match against John there in the quarterfinals. And then going down the bottom, I can see, somebody like him and AJ Corp meeting up in the Conci semis, and him seeing Baish Bakov. So there's a lot of quality guys here, but from my perspective, I see it playing out as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with, like I said, and you can't count out Jackson McGonigal, another senior who's 33-6. So, I just see these other guys just a little bit of a step ahead here, and that's how I see it. Guy, Smith, Court, Brillhart, by Ispakov and Beckett's right there as well.
And you and I pretty much have the same selections. Again, Guy and Smith in the final. I think real hard to be able to wrestle back. Uh, Beck Nazar be in the mix and the Contis, Donnie Beckett, as you said, and then AJ Corp. So it's going to be fun to see how this bracket shakes out. Guy, hopefully he gets challenged out there. Nobody likes to see, a tech fall in a final or something like that. But he's a technician out there, so it's gonna be interesting to see if he lives up to that billing going in there. So that's 160, 152. Dave, this is the bracket. You and I were at the sectional, and I think we had a blood time, or we had a lot of intermission there. And I said, talk about a bracket that is going to excite you going into next week at Southeast Regional. And we both kind of were like, 152 definitely could be that bracket. You have Gavin Carroll, who finished fifth in 2024. He's committed to Drexel, senior out of Quakertown. He's at the top, 40-4 in there. And then you have at the top half, you also have Hunter Delaney's in there from Sun Valley, who we saw. He finished second last week in the South. You also have in that top portion Johnny O'Brien from North Penn, 31-2. And then and then when you start transitioning into the bottom, you have Chris Dennis out of Central Bucks West, very good wrestler. And then who I was talking about earlier last time, Luke Knox out of Perkiomen Valley. He's another super soft, 39-2, really coming along. So a lot of great wrestlers in this bracket. And then obviously, I'll finish my portion up by talking about Zach Jaffe, who we were able to see in the finals, just dominate in terms of winning in Oxford last week. So just talk about this bracket and see how I think it's going to shake out.
I wish I had all the answers because I have no idea how this bracket's going to shake out. I think going back to what you said, Gavin Carroll obviously has to, there's a reason why he's the 1 seed coming into this bracket. He has the experience. He's 40-4. He's been to the state, the state tournament before. So, he's in the right spot. And I do think that he's going to be there in the final. However, when you look at that, the bottom half of that bracket, the top half of the bracket, you have Johnny O'Brien, and I don't know if enough gets said about him. I think he was a match away from making states last year, right?
Right.
He may have been injured the year before that, so this is a kid that is a really strong wrestler, and one that I'm going to keep an eye on this weekend because I really think. Again, he's coming in at 31-2. He is a very good wrestler, and I think we're going to see some things from Johnny this weekend. However, that semifinal match or that quarterfinal match is against Hunter Delaney, who we saw last week, right? Hunter's 29-8. He's a senior. He's been to the state tournament, another state qualifiers. So that's a great quarterfinal match. You drop down to the bottom. Oh, you know what? I'll stay up top because the first round match you got Nick Della Rocca out of Ridley, who's 30-3, who was
Impressed me
third
last week.
have wrestled really well last week. He's going against Owen Dykey, who's 34-14 out of Boyertown, who was third in the Central. So that's a first round matchup between two guys that both have 30 wins. So, that this is a great bracket. And then I go down to the bottom bracket. Like you said, you have Chris Dennis out of Central Bucks West, who's a junior, 28-6, and that quarterfinal match is going to be one to watch on Friday night with Chris Dennis and Luke Knox. Luke Knox, like you said, 39-2, sophomore. I'd have to look back. I think Luke may have qualified for states last year.
He qualified last year as a freshman, yes.
As a freshman. So, he has experience of getting there. So you can't say, oh, he's only a sophomore, hasn't been there. He's been there. The kid knows how to wrestle, and that's going to be a great quarterfinal match. And like you said, you have Zach Jaffe down the bottom, Cantus Smith, Joel Jones out of Upper Marion, who finished second last week, who lost to Luke Knox in the finals at the Central. So, there's so many ways this could shake out. To try to pick five, this was the most difficult one to really look at. But, if I had to do it, because you did ask me to do that. So, I'm looking at a Gavin Carroll. I'm looking at Chris Dennis. Those two, I really think I see that as possibly the final.
Oh,
Obviously, the
wow.
Dennis Knox matches. The Dennis Knox match is the one where I think is whoever wins that is definitely going to go to the finals. Whoever doesn't win that is going to come back and take third. That's how I look at that. I see, Zach Jaffe seeing Hunter Delaney or possibly Owen Dykey down in the Conti semis to get to that third, fourth place match, and then I have Johnny O'Brien actually coming out and qualifying as the fifth place guy, losing to Knox or Chris Dennis in that Conti semi. So I have Johnny O'Brien qualifying as well. But again, I'm not going to be surprised by any of 9 guys that could possibly. That's why I love this bracket so much. There's so many good wrestlers in this bracket. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, the gym's going to be buzzing when this bracket comes up, and there's 4 matches going. You're going to be turning your head all over the place just trying to watch. Even the first round, as you said, there's some great matchups in this, and then the quarters, I'm really looking forward to. I had Knox beating Dennis coming out of there, and then it's Jappy as well. So I had a Carol Knox final with Carol winning. I also my qualifiers are Carol, Knox, Jappy, O'Brien, Dennis.
Okay.
And you got to watch Delaney. Now, Delaney looked, he was messing with that knee brace last week. We got to keep an
Yeah.
eye on that. So hopefully he's healthy and ready to roll. But definitely that was something that you and I had our eye on. We were doing a live stream there. So 152, really looking forward to that. I'm Lloyd Vance. This is Dave Maiers. We're previewing the 2025 Southeast Regional here. We're sponsored by OWA Oxford Wrestling Alliance for this great telecast. Glad everybody could be with us. Got a lot of great feedback and views on our preview last week of the South Sectional. We also were able to do the live stream from the South Sectional, and we had a lot of views of that. So we appreciate everybody watching. We move on to 145. Now, this is another one. Dave, you got a prohibitive favorite, and it's not Council Rock South this time. It's Council Rock North. It's Aaron Cement. He's a senior, 46-2. Three times he's been third in the state of Pennsylvania, committed to Michigan. Uh, but like I said, you got to go out there and wrestle, and everybody always has a puncher's chance, and nobody's just going to roll over and say, here, take first place. So it's going to be interesting to see how this bracket shakes out. Early on, he has a quarterfinals match against Maxwell Hibbsman out of Quakertown, another senior, 29-11. I'm interested in watching that. In this top half, you also have Ramos out of Souderton, as you said earlier, with someone else. He's going to be in his home gym, sophomore, 32-4. He'll be factoring in there. Also in that top half, you have O'Donnell, who we saw last week. Nathan O'Donnell, he had a great run at the South
Yeah.
Sectional in terms of, he came out of nowhere, not very heralded coming into it, but he wrestled very well. Even in the finals, I noticed his footwork, had a great match. He came up a little short, but got a solid second place finisher. He's in that top half at 31-4. And then as you move to the bottom, I'll let you go through some of the names in here. Um, Very interested to see in terms of Cade Langle out of Kennett. He was in total control in that final. Senior, 38-6, another former state qualifier. Kennett has a bunch of 100 match winners coming up that we're going to talk about. So he's in the mix as well. I have Cement, and then in the final against James Stankina. You can't talk about this bracket without bringing him up. You're talking about Boyertown and their postseason excellence. So I have him in the mix going into the final. So talk about 145 a little bit.
Yeah. Again, I think prohibitive favorite, and I think that's why he's there. That's why he's at the 1 seed, and I don't see anything changing there. It's the reason why he's going to Michigan, right? So I don't see that changing. This is another bracket that I enjoyed. I actually think Kane's going to come out of the bottom. I do. I think Kane's going to go to finals. Um, I think Kane's on a mission. I think Kane actually, he's a 2-time state qualifier, and Kane looks a lot stronger this year, than I've seen the previous 2 years. Obviously, have some history with Kennett, with my own boys and whatnot. Um, but I see Kane's a different wrestler this year, and I think it's going to show this weekend. I really do. I see him making it to the finals. Um, but like you said, Shane Stankina out of Boyertown. I have him coming back to take third in this bracket. Like Boyertown. We always talk about Boyertown. Really, really, really strong team. Shane finished first in the Central section last week, so really quality wrestler. He's going to have himself a good match in the quarterfinals. You got Danny Metzler from Penridge, who took second in the North section last week. So that's an interesting quarterfinal match that I'm interested in. The one that I'm really interested in watching. Is above, and that's Ramos from Souderton against O'Donnell from Upper Darby. Like you said, we saw a little bit of O'Donnell last week. I haven't seen much of Ramos, but been reading a lot and been trying to prepare myself for tonight, and I'm reading a lot of good things about him. So I actually have him coming out. In the end, I have him coming out as a qualifier out of Souderton, even though he's a sophomore, 32-4. I'm interested to see how he does. A couple other names that I'm looking at, the first round match that I'm really interested in is that Ryan Hayes out of Methacton and Oxford's own Jared Scheibel. Jared's going to roll around with anyone, and Ryan Hayes comes in with a 35-8 record. Jared's 30-10, so you have two 30-win wrestlers again, meeting up in the first round. So kind of interested to see how that match goes. If Jared were to pull that off, most likely he's going to see Kane Lango again. I think for the sixth time. The two of
Right.
them have wrestled each other. So it'll be interesting to see how that match turns out. But Ryan Hayes is another one that I think we need to keep an eye on as a possible sleeper. But for me, I have, obviously Cement winning with Lango making the finals. And then I have Stankina, Ramos. And actually, I have Hibsman coming out. I have down in their the fifth and sixth place match. Hibsman out of Quakertown, and he was a senior, 29-11. I actually have him coming out. Looking at his after his match against Cement, I think he's got a better draw down the bottom, and I think it's going to give him an opportunity to come out and get that last spot.
It's going to be interesting to see how this one shakes out. A lot of good wrestlers in here. I have Cement winning it, Stankina in the final with him, O'Donnell, Langle, Ramos, and then Hayes factoring in there. So, but like you were saying, with Jared Scheibel being in there, everybody's got a puncher's chance, and it's gonna be a fun one to watch, particularly in the wrestlebacks, because yes, Cement is pretty much. I read online some people say he's a lock. I'm not saying anybody's a lock, but he's
Yeah.
very high ranked and for a particular reason. 139. Now this is an interesting one, Dave, because the number one seed is Blake Boyer. We got to watch him last week. Uh, I think he's a two-time state qualifier. He's a junior out of Penn at 39-4. Um, his finals match was a little bit closer than we thought it would be, and
Yeah.
uh, this is an interesting bracket because you have some other people in here. Levi Richmond, in particular, who wrestled him well, is in that top half of that bracket. You also have Beck Babb, who from Boyertown, another senior, 36-15. He was a central winner. As you drop down to the bottom bracket, you have Patrick Woloshin out of Count the Rock South, a junior, 45-11. He's in there. Also, the other Scheibel, Jordan Scheibel, he has to wrestle Cole Haynes again. Give him some love. His father was saying, make sure you talk about my son. So Cole Haynes, he did a nice job out of Unionville. Third place, he's down there in that bottom half of that bracket. You have Ryan Algier, and this is a first round match. I want to get your take on. You have Ryan Algier out of Half Hour Horseman. I got to watch in the district duels against Oxford, against Logan Fitzner out of Quakertown. I'm interested to see how that one shakes out. And then at the very bottom, you have Patrick Kelly out of Central Bucks West, the senior, 32-6, fourth in the state last year. A lot of good names in here. How do you think this one shakes out?
Yeah, so talking about that first round matchup that you just mentioned. So if you look at it, and this happens in a few brackets, which is interesting because, Ryan Algier is the third out of the North section, and Logan Fisner is the fourth out of the North section. So in their first round match, it's a rematch of the third, fourth place match last week at their section. So, obviously Ryan had gotten the better of him last week. This week, you don't know, you know, who's going to come out, but you got a guy from Quakertown, guy from Half Barrel Horse, two good programs. So it's definitely going to be a good match. But you'll see that throughout some of these brackets where guys that faced each other last week, turn around and face each other in the first round this week. So it's definitely interesting. But when I looked at this, just like you said, I'm honestly, for me, I'm looking at like uh, one of three guys to win this particular bracket, and then that being Blake and Patrick Kelly, and Patrick Wollashin is one that he's the one that I'm keeping an eye on. He's out of Council Rock South, 45-11. Has wrestled Blake Boyer tough in the past. Has wrestled Patrick Kelly tough. So I think that's going to be a really, really good semifinal match. Me particular, Bab and Richmond in the quarterfinals is one to
Yeah,
watch. So
interesting.
if Richmond pulls that one off, then you get the rematch of last week's sectional final against Boyer. Bab out of Boyertown, really good wrestler, senior. They're both seniors, but Bab 36 and 15. So I really see some really good wrestling coming out of here. You have up above, I have it, and who knows, I see Alex Brandt of Owen J. Roberts get an opportunity to wrestle Blake there in the quarterfinals. Alex Brandt's 25-12 out of O&J. We know about O&J, the programs that they put out there, the quality of wrestling that they have. Alex Brandt's one of those wrestlers. So, see what kind of effort he can put forth against Blake and kind of see where it goes. For me, I have, my like you said, we were talking earlier. My sleeper pick in here is that Ryan Algier. Got to see him at District Duels a little bit, saw a little bit of him. He's one that I think we need to keep an eye on. I have Boyer and Kelly in the finals. I know Boyer wants some revenge. I know they met last year, and I believe Kelly did defeat him. So that one's going to go either way. I have Wollashin, Bab, Richmond, and Algiers right there too. So there's six guys for five spots. I know we haven't said much, but like I can't wait for that 5-6 place match on Saturday. Starting at 5. That might be that's going to be the craziest mat all night, right? Everybody wants to watch the
Yeah.
finals, but that 5-6 place match, that's the match where everybody's really going to see who's that guy that's going. And I think in this particular weight class, 139, I think it's going to be a great match no matter who's there because there's some really good quality wrestlers in this bracket.
Yeah, Dave, and I worked regional for so many years at Oxford and been around the event a lot. And I remember when they changed the rules, and they said they were going to take five, and everybody always had their eye on the first place mat and that 5-6 mat because it got heated, man. It getting heated, fans screaming and teams jumping around for their guys. So yeah, I do agree with you. It's going to be interesting. And I have Boyer and Kelly in the final again, as you did. I actually have Kelly winning. Then I have Wolshin, Richmond, Bab, and then Algier. We'll see because, as you said, you got some quality kids there, and unfortunately, somebody's not going to be able to make it. But 139 a bracket you got to look forward to. Bumping down to 133. This is another one where you may have a prohibitive favorite, and you have Anthony Mutarelli out of Council Rock South. He's a senior. He's 30-3. He's a former national prep champion when he attended Malvern Prep in 2022. He's going to Oregon State. In the past, he's already tech balled Kane and Bab, who you'll see in this bracket, as well as some of the other guys here. So he's a quality wrestler. It's going to be interesting to see if he can hold serve here with that number one seed. You also have Daniel Dennis is on that top portion of the bracket out of Central Bucks West. He's a freshman, 32-5. He's up there as well. And then dropping down, you have Brecken Strickland, who we saw last week out of Sun Valley. He's in this bracket. I'm going to have my eye on him. I want to get your take on Ben Godshell coming out of Upper Perk. He's a guy that I want to see if he's able to take a step forward. And then Kobe Martinelli down the bottom there from Penridge. Last week he injury defaulted in the final. Wanted to get your take on that and just kind of see what you're thinking. Is it going to be Mutarelli that wins this bracket?
Yeah, I think it is. I think Mutarelli is he is the favorite to win this, and I think he is going to win it. I know Martinelli was there was question as to whether or not there was a few at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the postseason as to whether or not they were actually going to wrestle in postseason. Colby Martinelli was one of those. Another one, we both know that we didn't talk about last week was Curtis Nelson, who unfortunately, we're not seeing in the postseason. But Colby was one of those wrestlers, and Colby's back. He does have a 21-5 record. There was some question what weight was he going to be at? Well, he's at 133. So I think Martinelli's fine. Haven't heard anything up to this point. So I think we're going to get the best Colby Martinelli that we've seen. And, I see him getting there to the finals against Mutarelli. I was writing this out. It was hard to tell if I wrote Marinelli or Mutarelli because, but yeah, it's definitely, I have Mutarelli against Martinelli there in the final. And then after that, there's some great matches that I want to see, and it starts with the first round match. You had mentioned Ben Godshaw. He's a junior at 32-9 who has wrestled a really tough schedule and has wrestled some really tough kids. So I'm interested to see. But I have seen the freshman from J. Roberts, Carter Soto, who took second out of this Central, and he's my sleeper in this bracket. Carter Soto as a freshman at 24-10 is a really good wrestler. Like I said, I saw him in one of his duels earlier in the year, and he's somebody to keep an eye on in this particular bracket. So, and then you look at Jacob Plant out of Plymouth Whitemarsh, who's 30-2. He was third in the Central. So another guy that if the bracket plays out the way that I see it playing out, Plant and Soto are going to see each other down in the in the Contis, where the guy that loses is going to be done, and the other guy goes on and wrestles in the Conti semi. So, there's a lot of good quality wrestling in here. When I look at it, and then when it comes down to it, I look at Mutarelli, Martinelli, and then I have to give Pierce Kane. I know he finished fourth in the North, and he wrestled Daniel Dennis, who took third in the North, but it was a close match. Um, you know, Pierce a little bit more experience. Daniel's a freshman. I think the second time around, I see Pierce as somebody who can wrestle back. After that match he has is against Mutarelli, he's going to have to wrestle back and beat some really good kids like Masano out of Haverford and possibly Brecken Strickland. Um, so, but I think Pierce Kane has that experience. Even though his record's 28-12, some of those are Power Aids and Beasts of the East and some of the other tournaments that Council Rock North has been in. I see Pierce Kane is coming back and getting, I guess, a little bit of redemption against Dennis. And then that fifth, sixth place match is one that I'm interested in because it could be a number of guys, but I see it as Brecken Strickland, who we've seen for quite a few years now. I think his experience is what puts him over the top, and I see somebody like Soto possibly being there or Plant being in that match as well. So it's kind of how I see it playing out.
133 is going to be interesting because you have Mutarelli, and then we'll see what kind of falls behind him and
Yep.
how Martinelli, if he's ready to roll. But yeah, I definitely think Plant will be in the mix as well. He was a good name that you threw out there. Moving on to 127. Now, this one's an interesting bracket as well because you have Quinn McBride out of Penridge. He's a junior at the top. He's 25-7. He finished sixth in 2024. You talked about Soto. He lost to Soto earlier, 8-6 this season, but he did beat Diorio 14-1. That's just an example. So McBride, tough wrestler at the top of this bracket. And then you have also in that top bracket, you have Sean Murray out of Upper Perk, sophomore, 32-5. He's in the mix. And then as you go to the lower portion, you have Bryce Boyer out of Kennett. We got to see him last week. He finished second. He's a sophomore. He's 31-13, so he'll be in the mix. And then in the same section, and it's interesting because you have Chase Siegel, who him and Boyer, that was a pretty close match last week. Siegel um, is at the bottom of this lower half of the bracket, so he's in the mix. And then I'll throw in for my home team, high school team, John Kaplan from Abington. He's a senior, 29-6. I think he'll be in the mix as well. So a lot of good names at 127. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, so the first thing that I noticed when I looked at this bracket, and I don't know if you noticed it or not, but the top half of the bracket of the 9 wrestlers is all 6 central qualifiers. So 1 through 6 are in the top half, and then the bottom half has all 6 south qualifiers. So then they split. So basically, if somebody from like down the bottom, I look at it, and pretty much every match involves, mostly somebody from the south. So, for somebody from the north to come out of the bottom is going to be tough. When you have 6 of the south guys up top, I say it might be tough for somebody from the north, but I don't think it is. I see Quinn McBride as being somebody who comes out up top, has a really good semifinal match. Who I think it would be against Sean Murray, um, out of Upper Perk, but you know that quarterfinal match would pit the first place guy, Sean Murray from the Central, against the second place guy from the Central, and Steve Wychecki out of Conestoga. So you'll get a rematch of a district final in the quarterfinals. So that's pretty interesting to see that happen there. So, but then when you go down bottom, you kind of see the same thing. You see Boyer, most likely looking at a possible matchup against the Oreo. Although Logan McMillan, we talk about him, he's
Yeah, he's
another one out
battling.
of Oxford, kind of scrappy, and he's going to wrestle you for the full 3 periods. So he's got a first round match against the Oreo. Obviously, that was the third, fourth place match last week. So, and the Oreo came out on top. So, Boyer gets by his first guy who's from the South, has to wrestle another South guy in Diorio, who he's beaten before. That's going to be a really good quarterfinal, Boyer and Diorio. So when whoever gets there to semifinals, I have Boyer getting there, but then you're gonna see, in my mind, Chase Eagle. So there's another South guy. You got to look at Danny Mallets out of North Penn, who's 27-6, as a good quarterfinal match against Siegel. But down the bottom, I see the semifinal being the 1 and the 2 out of the South, and then up top I have the Central one and the North one. I have McBride, and maybe it's a little bit of bias here. I see Boyer getting some revenge. I saw the way he reacted after that match of the final last week against Siegel, and got up, clapped his hands, and was like, "Okay, you know what? That's all right. I'm going to see him again." And I'm gonna give Boyer the edge here. But then going down the bottom, I have Mary Siegel and Diorio coming out with. Wychecki is somebody to keep an eye on down there. That's the other guy that I think we need to keep an eye on.
My final, I have Murray against Siegel. So I think there needs to be some non-chalk in this bracket, and
Yeah.
and then uh, making it out, I think McBride, obviously Boyer, and then I want to throw Kaplan in there as well. So we'll see how this shakes out. As you said, they're going to take 5, but there's possibly about 7 kids in here you could pick from. So 127 is going to be a competitive bracket. As you said, the interesting seating in that one, but we'll see how it shakes out. Moving on to 121. Uh, this is interesting. You have Brody Coleman from Boyertown. He's a senior, 41-8. Excuse me, never been to States. He's at the top there. You have Andre Chisnick in there, another Siegel. You have Von Schmidt down the bottom, Sam Howe, and then Marco Loss. So talk about this bracket.
Yeah, a lot of guys in this bracket that could potentially find themselves going to Hershey. Like you said, looking up top, Brody Coleman out of Boyertown, a 41-8. I do think finds his way to the final. Although he's got a really interesting quarterfinal match against Sam Hunter out of Central Bucks East, who finished third in the North, who comes in at 33-3. So, just beneath that, I see a rematch of last week's final in the quarterfinal between Siegel and Shiznick out of Coatesville. So, that'll be a good match. Go down the bottom, Von Schmidt, really strong wrestler. We've seen him a few times. I've seen him in the years past down at Rage in the Cage. I've seen him wrestle when he comes down there. We've seen him at District Duels as well. First round match that I'm interested is Tommy Robinson, who was fifth out of the South, against Michael Lozano, who was second out of the Central. In looking at some things, Tommy Robinson actually defeated Lozano earlier in the year. So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch there in the first round. And then down the bottom, Sam Howell is his first round match is a rematch of last week's fourth place match, and then Marco lost down the bottom. In this, I have Coleman and lost in the finals, with Loss actually winning this one as the 2 seed down the bottom. Siegel and Shiznick coming out, Von Schmidt, and the one I want to keep an eye on, who I think two actually. I talked about Sam Hunter. It's the two Sams, Sam Hunter and Sam Howell. I would not be surprised if either one of those two find their way to Hershey based off of wrestlebacks and whatnot. But both Sams are two wrestlers that I'm interested in watching this weekend.
Yeah, and I have Coleman against Von Schmidt in the final. That's gonna be interesting to see if that shakes out. Because in the semis I have Coleman against Siegel, Von Schmidt against Loss, and Loss has had a very good season, as you were saying. Um, the top five: Coleman, Von Schmidt, Siegel, Chisnick, Loss, and then you do got to put Sam Howell in there, and particularly how it goes with the wrestlebacks. This is going to be another very competitive bracket, and unfortunately, a good wrestler is not going to make it to Hershey. So, going to have my eye on 121. Coming around the corner, we're at 114 here on the 2025 Southeast AAA Regional Preview. I'm Lloyd Vance. I'm here with Dave Maiers. This is another bracket. You say, okay, you got the top guy at the top, and he's top for the reason. He was first in the state in 2024, Dominic Morrison out of Half Hour Horse, and I got to watch him earlier this season at the district duels when Half Hour came to Oxford, and he is impressive. So Dominic Morrison, obviously, he's at the top of this bracket for a reason. But then you have a lot of good wrestlers in here. We saw Darren Minikazi last week from Sun Valley. He's in there. He was grinding on top. We were both impressed the way he was wrestling. Max Tansini from Perkiomen and Valley. He's in that top bracket. Junior 40 win wrestler at 40-3. And then as you go to the bottom, you have Jaden Lee out of Radnor. He was qualified for states last year, had a big surprise win, so he's in the mix there. Gus Smith, who we've seen qualify for states in the past, he's in the mix there. Zach McFarland, who wrestled pretty well last week in Oxford, and then Clayton Wadenbaugh. So out of Souderton, so the home gym will be excited for him. So a lot of good names in this bracket. I thought you and I were talking earlier. I thought 114, 152, they were some of the marquee brackets going into the regional.
Yeah, so for me, I was getting ready to say that of those two, because we did talk about those two particular, 114, 152. 152, I see having, 8, 9 wrestlers. 114, I see as going to be some of the best matches that we see on Friday and Saturday. Starting with Don Morrison at the top, state champ. And I see him winning this bracket. But then after that, I have to go down to Clayton Waltonball, transfer from Faith Christian, and he's a sophomore. Last week he took first at the Central. Max Tansini, who's 40-3, they met in the semifinals, and Waltonball got the best of him in that match last week. So, Clayton Waltonball comes in, like I said, with a really good record and a really good tournament last week. Because I thought 114 in the Central last week was one of the toughest brackets in all of the districts that we had. So, but for me, I see it as, Morrison winning it over Waltonbaugh. I have Tansini, Max Tansini. He's a junior wrestling 114. It's probably a little bit bigger for 114, but he gets down to the weight, and he's a strong kid. And I see him, you know, actually he's the type of kid that's going to place at states. He's that good of a wrestler. So, he's going to see Minikazi probably in the quarters, and then he's going to get a shot at Morrison in the semi. So, like you said, you have prohibitive favorites, but nobody's guaranteed. So I think that Morrison Tansini match is going to be one of the better matches that we see um, all weekend long. And then when you go down the bottom, the match that I'm looking forward to is Jaden Lee and Gus Smith. Gus Smith finished
That's a good quarter.
fourth. Yeah, that's a good quarter. Smith finished fourth out of the Central. Jaden Lee finished second out of the Central. I'm not sure what the brackets look like and who beat who, but Gus Smith is a really good wrestler. He's a senior, 32-8. So I could see that match going either way. And then getting to Walton Ball. So the way I see it is, Morrison, Walton Ball, Tansini, Lee, and Gus Smith. But I have to the one match that I'm looking forward to on Friday night in the first round is Kevin McFadden, who's a sophomore out of Penn Ridge at 22-13, who finished second to Morrison out of the North. He's actually going up against a really good freshman out of Ridley and Braden Laird, who comes in 25-3. Yeah, he finished third in the South, but had a really good match against Zach McFarland, lost in sudden victory, I believe. So that I think that's going to be a really good first round match between those two guys. Really looking forward to it. But I see this kind of playing as is with, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I guess Gus Smith is actually sixth. But that's kind of I see it playing out with McFadden, Minikazi in the mix.
It's going to be another great bracket, and this is another one where, unfortunately, one of these young men is he'll be in the stands in Hershey rather than wrestling there, but I do see Don Morrison kicking this bracket out, obviously, and Wadenbaugh, he's going to be in the mix as well. I have those two in the final, and then Cancini, Gus Smith, McFarland, Lee, they're all in the mix for those last couple spots. So we're definitely going to have our eye on that as we head up to Souderton. And our last bracket, and I know these little guys are normally first, but we'll go over last is 107. And this one, Dave, as we were talking about the sectional last week, a lot of young wrestlers in here, a lot of freshmen, a couple of sophomores sprinkled in here. So, you're really not sure what you're going to get, but you have Dom Powell at the top from Upper Dublin. He's a state qualifier from 2024, sophomore 28-3. Then you have Jake Danchak out of Boyertown, another freshman, 26-18. I know he has some losses there, but as you're saying, Boyertown wrestlers are so tough. You have AJ Kane, another Council Rock North wrestler there, 32-11. He's in the mix. Noah Smith from Avon Grove, he impressed me last week in terms of just working his way through the bracket. He finished second, had a pretty good final that you and I were able to commentate. So he's 30-8. He's in that top bracket. Jump down below them a little bit. Jacob Parr. He was another one wrestler we saw. He's from Sun Valley. He was dominant on top, and he grinded that match out. He's a freshman, 33-7 there. And then as we drop to the lower bracket, Pace Williams out of Central Bucks East, he's 32-2. He got third actually out of North. When they get your take on that, Kyle Tomzak Radner 30-8. He's in there as well. And then I'll bring up John Sagata from Council Rock South. I got to watch him during the district rules. He's 39-11. He's a very good wrestler. So talk about this bracket and what you see with this one.
Yeah, I'm going to say exactly what you just said from the last one. There's going to be somebody from this bracket that's going to be left out of Hershey, and that's a shame because this is a really strong 107 class. I see it playing out. Actually, a lot of these guys have wrestled each other. Williams lost 9-6 to Hoffman. He has a 1-1 ultimate tiebreaker. Lost to Sagata. There's his two losses. So he's lost to two guys within the bracket already. You have Jacob Carr, who was super impressive last week. I see him meeting Dom Powell in the semis. That's really that's a semifinal I'm really interested in seeing. Um, you know, quarterfinal match, Chase Williams, Schaefer Hoffman. Like I said, they've seen each other already, and we're going to see that right there in the quarterfinal. I see it. Actually, you know what? I went a little bit different here. I have Williams coming out on top in this one. Just gonna like I said, he's gonna have to go through Hoffman. He's gonna have to go through Sagata. He's gonna have to go through Powell. If he does that, he deserves every bit of OW from my standpoint. But it's just it's not a easy bracket. But I see Williams, Powell, Carr, Sagata, and then I see Hoffman and Kane down there. Like I said, unfortunately, one of those guys is going to be left out of this. All these guys are ranked high in the state, and it's a shame that somebody's going to be left out. But that's kind of how I see it playing out.
And this one, the lower guys, I don't know as much as the heavier guys. But I just have I have Powell against the guy in the finals, and then I have Carr, Williams, and Stanchek making the tournament in Hershey. So, as you said, very good, impressive group at 107, and just the overall group at Southeastern region is going to be interesting as they move to Hershey. In the past, the medalist numbers were not that high, but the last couple of years, this region has really started putting out some champions and bringing home a lot of medals in terms of Hershey and guys hitting the podium in the top eight. So glad that you were able to join me. Anything as we close, Dave?
Yeah, no, I just real fast. You look at the team, the team scores. When you come to the end, we talked about a little bit, but I think you're going to see Boyertown, your Council Rocks. Oxford has 10 kids going or 9 kids going. So Oxford, out of the Chesmont, Quakertown, Sun Valley, you're going to have a really good team race as well. So I'm looking forward to things getting started on Friday night and finishing up on Saturday night. And there's going to be a lot of quality wrestling. And wish the boys nothing but the best out there. And good luck to everybody.
Good luck to everyone, and we appreciate everybody joining. I'm Lloyd Vance for Dave Maiers. We appreciate OWA getting involved in the telecast, and we'll talk to everybody later.